political extremists have taken hostages downtown.
Somebody do something!
Wait! Stop! We'll get to all of that. Just relax, okay? We'd lost Shelley a year ago. These days, it's just me and the kid.
It looks great.
I'll just scrape off the black part. That part's pretty good.
No, give him back.
I don't want to hurt him.
Why didn't you do anything?
Sometimes it's better to do nothing.
It's going good.
You're saying that this corporation would knowingly poison its own customers just to boost their own profit margins?
Summon the nuts.
Okay, summoning the nuts.
I didn't want any of this. I'm a monster.
You're not a monster. Show him your good heart.
Hey, buddy, I'm your dad.
What the?
I wasn't even involved. But sometimes, you gotta do something.
Who the fuck are you?
Just some dude with a mouth!
I'm screaming the pain, holding hands up to God.
How does it feel to be a hero?
A simple melody.
Do you realize what's at stake here?
Everything!
Find him, bring him here.
There you are.
Only the good things, that's all that matters.
That was just self-defense. You haven't killed anyone else, have you?
See, when you say, self-defense,
Only the good things,
He's an ugly son of a bitch, though.
that's all that matters to me.
The toxic Avenger.
That's what the kids are calling him. I think it's swell.
Welcome to the Longest Take podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Longest Take podcast. In today's episode, I am joined by Macon Blair. Macon Blair is an accomplished American film director, producer, screenwriter, comic book writer, and actor. He is known for his roles in the films Blue Ruin and Green Room, as well as his directorial debut, I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. On March 24th, 2019, it was announced that Blair would write and direct the Toxic Avenger reboot for Legendary Pictures. I implore everybody to go see it in theaters August 29th, this Friday. It looks like such a fun time. Peter Dinklage seems to have perfected the role as Toxie. And as always, please welcome Macon to today's episode. First things first, what are your top 5 favorite movies?
I get the question. It's very difficult. I'm not trying to be slippery, but I it would sort of depend on what movie I'm watching at the time and that kind of thing. I can tell you 5 that I love, and they would be among my favorites. But I think it would be very difficult for me to drill down and say, like, if you could only watch 5 movies ever, it would take me forever to figure out what those would be. But I've always really loved Frankenstein, the original, the James Whale Frankenstein. Jaws, you can never go wrong with Jaws. It's pretty much a perfect movie. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Based purely on like how many times I can watch it and never get tired of it, The Naked Gun. It's one of those ones where I've got two kids that are 12 and 8 years old, and trying to find the overlap of like shit that they like to watch and shit that I like to watch is sometimes tricky. But I got them on The Naked Gun, and we watch it about once a month. So even just this year alone, I've probably watched it 5 times. Never gets old. I really love Bringing Up Baby, a Howard Hawks movie with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. I watched that when I was really young, and it kind of, I don't know, it just stuck with me, and I go back to it every couple of years. And then another one that I saw when I was a bit older, but it also stuck with me, and I also keep going back to it, is Out of Sight. Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight. I'm a big fan of Elmore Leonard's novels, and that's kind of, there've been a lot of adaptations of his books, and a lot of them are quite great, but that one is my favorite one. I just feel like it does a remarkable job of being a really gnarly crime story and a very sweet romance at the same time, and like either side of that never overshadows the other, and it's just relentlessly charming, and I watch that one every couple of years as well.
Yeah, and has there been a recent Leonard adaptation? I feel like I've heard that name pop up sometime recently.
I don't know. He had a lot. He went through a phase where he was doing a lot of westerns, and a lot of his westerns got made. Hombre was one, and then obviously there was a lot of either Florida or Detroit based crime stories. Get Shorty and a lot of others I'm not thinking of, but off the top of my head, I don't think there's been one in recent years. If there has been, I missed it. But
okay, yeah, I'm seeing Jackie Brown. Maybe I was on a Tarantino kick and I saw that come up, but yeah, still very, very like you said, gritty crime. I feel like Leonard captures that extremely well.
For sure, yeah. Jackie Brown was based on Rum Punch, and he kind of. I mean, actually, I think that's kind of my favorite Tarantino movie. I feel like the book was great, but I like his version even better. He kind of took the best parts of the novel and filled it out and kind of made it better than the source material in a way. So yeah, that's a great one too.
Yeah, that's always great. And
that one has like the shared universe with Out of Sight, because the Fed character that Michael Keaton plays is the same guy in both movies. That they just sort of, which one came first? I should know this, but whichever one came first, I think it was Jackie Brown came first, and then Out of Sight happened, or maybe I have that backwards. But at any rate, they made sure to get Michael Keaton so that the character would have some continuity between the two movies, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, and it's awesome that you bring that up. I had no idea that there was that connective tissue between the two. And Jackie Brown was 97, Out of Sight was 98. So it's funny how they're even like just a year apart. So there had to have been conversations like, we got this one coming out, and then we're working on this one, Yeah, I read something about it, and I'm going to get the details wrong, but there was something to do with the Weinstein Company that like, you should double check this because I may have my facts wrong, but it was something like Tarantino went to the people that had, the legal accountability for the character of Ray Nicolette and made sure that could be used in this other movie or something like that. Somebody pulled some strings so that they wouldn't have to recast or rename that character, which I thought was a cool touch because it makes them feel like they inhabit the same universe. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I've actually seen Out of Sight, but I'm going to watch Jackie Brown and then go right into Out of Sight. Give myself a little duology there to rewatch.
That'd be a great double feature. I think they sort of like have similar things about them, but they're both very unique, singular filmmakers doing their top-notch work, and so that'll be a fun double feature for you. I'm jealous.
Yeah, and it's also great because a lot of people on here, they say Jaws because, I mean, like you said, that's a perfect movie, hands down. And
yeah.
I can't believe that we're already at the 50th anniversary for it. And it's
Yeah.
like how much it's just held over the years. You watch it today and it holds up compared to, you know, any contemporary movie. It's just
Absolutely.
incredible.
Yeah. It never gets old. It's and I think it's sort of like, for me, it's, you know, you think about obviously the shark stuff and the horror and, you know, people getting, you know, the fin and everything like that, and that's all part of it, but it's also terribly funny, and just like full of jokes and great little secondary characters that pop up you know, they've got one line or something. Oh, what? And it sticks in your brain forever. So I think that's what helps it remain so rewatchable, at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the humor too, I mean, that's something that you see in a lot of just, you know, modern blockbusters today. Even Spielberg, I feel like, was the pioneer for that. You know, it has a very Amblin feel to it, when even like things such as Marvel and these other companies doing it. I feel like you could probably trace it all back to Spielberg. At least in my experience, I feel like he's the one who kind of, you know, pioneered working a little bit of funny in there and not making it take away from the thrills and everything. So,
but yeah, I mean, there was something about that being the first, like the way it's thought of as being the first big summer blockbuster, and everything subsequent to that, to one degree or another, was sort of measured against like how is it as big a hit as Jaws was, or not as big, and that sort of set a standard for what summer blockbusters are supposed to achieve. So yeah, a big footprint for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at your filmography, especially as it pertains to acting, I mean, you're going on almost, if not like 20 years. So what was your introduction into film? Like, you know, what got you into this?
In a lot of ways, it was, I mean, Frankenstein was a big part of it, because they, you know, I'm kind of using Frankenstein to sort of encompass a lot of the Universal monster movies, but they would show those, they would show 16 millimeter prints of those movies on Halloween at the library, the public library in my neighborhood. And at a very young age, I remember watching those movies, and it was just kind of like the makeup and everything was so captivating. And then they also had some books there about Jack Pierce and like makeup techniques, and you know, they were very elementary books, but to me it was very fascinating. And around that same time, there was an older kid across the street from me who had a Super 8 millimeter camera, and he taught me how to do claymation movies. And so little by little, with those kinds of things, I started to get interested in just sort of like how the stuff all works, because before then I was a kid, and I was like, I don't know, you point the camera at something and something happens and it's a movie. And then suddenly it was like people or books or whatever saying like, no, there's a step, like you put this on their face, and then you put cheesecloth, and then you do this, and then you paint it this color, or you take the thing and you move it this way and you move it this way, and you photograph it one frame at a time. And so the whole sort of process behind these things became kind of fascinating to me. And then a little bit after that, it was, you know, like the mid to late 80s by this point, and home video cameras kind of became like a thing that you could have. And so one of my friend's parents had a home video camera, and we started using that to make our own movies around the neighborhood. And from that point forward, that was kind of really what we did with our spare time after school and on the weekends, was just run around making our own movies. And it all kind of like moved forward from there. But that's kind of how it started, was just running around the neighborhood with friends, trying to figure out how to make them ourselves.
Yeah, and that's a very like DIY way of doing it. You know, that's I mean, to even harken back to Spielberg, when he released The Fabelmans, you see that was kind of his trajectory in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it's always about having that passion from a young age and just, you know, going from there. I think that's really awesome. And it's also funny, but it's really cool that Frankenstein is so pivotal to in your foray into film. It shows just how much that movie meant to you. Are you excited for Guillermo del Toro's upcoming Frankenstein?
Yeah, dude, it looks fucking awesome.
Dude, it looks so good.
It looks amazing, and it's sort of like I really love the James Whale one, but I like the Hammer versions too. I kind of like all the versions. I like all the Draculas. I like all the Wolfmans, to varying degrees. And so to me, it's like, if they're making a new Frankenstein, I mean, Maggie Gyllenhaal has one too, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's at least 2 new Frankensteins. Could be more coming out. And as far as I'm concerned, like, the more the better. But yeah, of course, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see that. I know it's going to be something special.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So this question here is a personal one, because my introduction to you was Blue Ruin. Fantastic movie. That's your first leading role, or did you have one before then? That was probably the first.
No, that would be my first leading role in a feature. Well, so I was talking about a group of kids running around the neighborhood. The kid who had the video camera, that was Jeremy Saulnier.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and there was a group of like 8 of us, but he was among them. A lot of people in Blue Ruin were in that group, and so he had put me in a bunch of his short films before, but he wrote Blue Ruin specifically for me to play and for him to direct and to kind of self-finance it to a large degree, as a kind of like get your foot in the door type of maneuver. Like that makes it sound like it was like a calculated, cynical thing, and I don't mean that, but I mean it was meant to be like his, like, I'm trying to get myself into the movie business, and that was his way in, and he attached me to that from the beginning. So that was good luck for me.
Yeah, and it has a little bit of that like gritty, kind of, I mean, not so much crime, but it still has that gritty, real element to it that you could find in like Leonard novels, right? And I always appreciate how the movies following that one, you show up, usually it's in a smaller capacity, obviously, but I don't believe you were in Rebel Ridge, right? You probably, no. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I wasn't in that one. But yeah, no.
Okay. But I also noticed that in Hold the Dark, you had a co-writing, or you wrote the screenplay. So you adapted the book, actually,
I adapted William Giraldi's book. There was some overlap where Jeremy and I both read the book around the same time, and we started talking about it, and he worked out a situation where he was going to develop it for him to direct, and so it was basically like I got the writing assignment with the understanding that he would be directing it. So I knew, in other words, that he was going to be directing it when I was writing it, and I tried to kind of tailor it to what I understood to be his sensibilities.
Awesome. And so what did you think of the book when you read it? Because I had read it, I think, when Hold the Dark was greenlit. It was like it was long before it came out. I saw that because I had just seen Green Room, I think, and I love the premise, so I read the book. But what were your thoughts on the book, and I guess what inspired you to want to go after a project like this? I mean I know you said that Jeremy had a big part in that, but
yeah, well, I mean part of it was like in knowing that I wanted to find something to work on with Jeremy. Part of it was thinking like, this could fit into what Jeremy is really good at, which was to say, he develops these very rich atmospheric environments, whether it's a punk rock club or like a beach town, or in this case a remote snowy village or whatever, and he's just very good at creating this universe and then building tension and dread to its maximum, and then he sort of pops it with little spurts of violence here and there, and I thought this sort of fit into that, or could fit into that for him to do. I read the book, and aside from thinking that it would be great for Jeremy, it really kind of it was very scary to me, not in a monster jumping out kind of way, but in a unsettling, eerie kind of way. It was very beautiful written, like the prose was beautiful, but the vibe of reading it just left me very unsettled. And I think part of that was that all these mysterious, kind of arcane, very tragic things happened to this couple in this village. And it in the book especially, it's very mysterious why any of it's happening. There's sort of like suggestions why it may be happening, but it's never really explained, and that's what made it very eerie and unsettling to me as a reader. And I just felt like if we could carry that sort of eerie, unsettled feeling into a film, it would be really cool. And I don't know if I'm proud of the movie and I love it. I know a lot of people have felt like they felt like because the motivation of the main killer and what he was up to was not crystal clear, that it was hard for them to connect with, and I can understand that. And so I don't know, maybe I would do it differently if I had to go back and do it again. But at the time, I felt like preserving that sort of opaque quality where you don't know what's going on behind the people's faces was part of the point. And so we doubled down on that for better or worse.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I appreciate about that, even if it worked to the detriment a little bit, is it felt very faithful to the book. Like, 'cause I had read the book, I had kind of went through it again before the movie came out, before I watched it, and it feels very, very faithful to it. So I think, these people that kind of said that, I'm sure if they went and read the book, they would have the same concerns. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's,
Well, it's also like a book kind of fulfills a different thing than a movie does. I mean, like, right. Because when you're reading a book, you're doing so much of the work yourself. It's all like you're getting the words, but you're building everything in your head. When you're watching a movie, if you're denied too much of that stuff, I can see how it might be frustrating. But that was the choice we went with at the time. So
yeah,
that's
whatever works, and I think I think it was a success on Netflix, right? In terms of, I don't know how the whole streaming thing works. I don't know how that is, but
I don't know it's really hard to know, because there's at least with that movie and anything else that I've done there, the numbers are very secretive, and so I would get updates, like verbal updates from whoever we were working with, and they would say it's doing well, or it's doing okay, or doing so, but it was never like, here are the actual number of views or anything like that. That was always very mysterious. So is
that like a clearance thing? Like, you have to be in a certain role to be privy to that information?
I think you have to be. Yeah, I assume so. I think you have to be on the inside of the technological wall, see all the machinery. Give me 1 second here.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Take some chicken out of the oven.
No worries. So I got a list here of some other, I would call them almost cameos, in the sense of, I believe you were in these movies just in smaller capacities, but Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, Sean Baker's The Florida Project, Steven Soderbergh's Logan Lucky. You've worked with so many different and so many highly praised directors. I guess, just what have you learned when being on these sets, even if you're on set for like a day or something? Like, what's your takeaway usually when you're up against these guys that are, Goliaths in their own right?
Yeah, I mean, all three of those ones that you mentioned, I really hold in very high regard. Like, long before I ever thought I would get a chance to work with them, I was a huge fan of their movies. Sean I had actually met on the film festival circuit, because his first movie was on the festivals at the same time, I think, as Murder Party, Jeremy's first movie, and we kind of met and stayed in touch. So I was a fan of his from that. Obviously, Soderbergh I've been in love with since the beginning, and Nolan is just a master, I think a lot of people would say. So I was a huge fan of his movies as well. And to find myself on those sets, I felt incredibly lucky. And what I tried to do in each case was kind of sit tight and not make a lot of noise and not, you know, not get in anybody's way, and just try to observe them at work. And to varying degrees, what all three of them seemed to, what I saw anyway, was this great degree of economy where they, first of all, just where things were being filmed was very stripped back. There was just not a lot of people. It was very stripped down. It felt like with the Florida project, they had very little money, so that might have been just a feature of like their crew was very small because it was an incredibly low budget movie. But even on something that was comparatively big budget like Oppenheimer, it felt very streamlined and very tight, and they didn't seem like they were shooting stuff that they weren't going to use. It all felt very specific, and they would do a blocking. They would make sure that like the scene was going in their own ways. The scene was going how they wanted it, and then they would set up coverage based on that. And it was very, it was just very cool to watch like Steven Soderbergh sit in the corner and kind of hunch down and watch three people play a scene, and then he would think about it for about 2 seconds. Then he would go 35 millimeter right here, and he would point to a particular spot on the floor, and just shoot this coverage in a very precise, streamlined kind of way. And I think you can kind of feel that in the finished product. They all feel very tight. There's not a lot of fat on any of them, and I just loved watching them work and sort of like seeing how they would interact with the crew and sort of get what they needed in a very precise, quick way that kept things feeling positive and forward, like a forward momentum. But getting very clearly what they needed, and then also how they would speak to the actors to get what they wanted, which was also very pared down. Like I never saw anybody have a big, let's have a conversation about what you're feeling, or it would just be like, when you say this line, it means more, or something very, very contained and encapsulated, and it would change the whole dynamic of the scene. And I would, you know, I'd be on the other side watching that, kind of like, whoa, that was remarkable. So it was in each of those cases, it was a privilege to get to see that up close.
Yeah, and that there's like a really nice, I think, efficiency there, in, you know, just what you're saying about how they run the sets. I know you obviously, like, your first directorial venture was before something like Oppenheimer, but do you notice yourself, like, in the way that you direct your movies, kind of like, you know, reflecting or kind of playing into what you learned being on those sets?
I mean, that's interesting. I hope so. I mean, I wouldn't say it would be not honest to say that I sit down and go, okay, I'm gonna do what I saw Sean Baker do, or something like that. Right. I may have hopefully learned some lessons on like and internalized something and sort of carried it forward in whatever I wanted to do, and sort of felt like, okay, this is the way that people who are really good at this handle things. I would say, I think because I've been so up close with him, and because I have known him for so long and done so much work with him, I've learned more from Jeremy Saulnier than anybody else. And to the extent that I know anything at all about this, I would say I probably learned it from growing up with him.
Yeah, that's a really fair point too. And I mean, just looking at the trailer for the Toxic Avenger, and you know, you got a lot of carnage in there, and I mean, you look at the repertoire of Saulnier, and you know, he's kind of got that too, that gritty, you know, carnage candy, if you want to call it that sometimes.
For sure.
But, you know, speaking on Toxic Avenger, at what stage of the production was it decided that you wanted Peter Dinklage to be Toxie?
Well, it was, we went through a period of developing the script and writing the script and getting it up and running. But once we got into casting, pretty early on, I suggested him to the executives, and we started, reaching out to him and seeing if he wanted to read it and whatever. And part of that was because I knew that we had this character that was going to be in the movie for about 20 minutes before he becomes a mutant, and so I wanted a really strong actor for that opening chunk that people could connect with. And what had happened was he had seen the first movie I made, and just in a very kind way reached out and said that he enjoyed it. He saw it at a film festival and said that he liked it, and suggested we stay in touch. And so over the years, that was about 2016 or something like that. And so over the years, he would send me scripts to read, to just give thoughts on. I would send him scripts. And so there was a little bit of a communication there. It wasn't like we were best buds or anything like that, but there was an open communication there. And so I felt like, look, hey, I don't know if he's going to say yes or not, but he'll at least read the script and give an honest answer. And when he said he read it and came back, and when he said he wanted to do it, that's what actually got the thing greenlit.
Oh, awesome. So you're saying it was the star power of Peter Dinklage, or just the fact that you got the lead?
We needed the star power of Peter Dinklage. The studio is very supportive of the script. They liked the script. They wanted to make the movie, but they were like, given, it's sort of like on their spectrum. I suspect this was a smaller movie for Legendary, because they do Godzilla and
right,
very, very, very big movies. So for them, this was a small movie, but it was still it cost some money, and they needed somebody with some name brand recognition to sort of anchor it. And so him saying yes was the thing that triggered it into production.
That's awesome. And was it then after that point, obviously, when you got the likes of Kevin Bacon and Elijah Wood to get involved? Because I know Elijah Wood was in your first film that you did.
That's correct. And I had written that part for Elijah. So, and he kind of I think he had read it by that point. And so my sense was Elijah was already interested in doing it kind of early on, but his role as the sort of one of the bad guys was not the one that they needed to fill with a face in order to greenlight it. It was sort of once we had the Toxie character cast, then it was okay, we can cast all these other people, and I was immediately able to be also Elijah wants to do this, and they're great. So he came aboard very quickly, and then it sort of, we would get one after the other after that. So
yeah, that's awesome, because I mean, that's just, those three alone just have incredible careers. And going back to Peter for a second too, so I think after you wrapped this, you and Peter worked, you both were in The Thicket, and then you wrote Brothers, which he was one of the stars in. So
well, I co-wrote Brothers. Brothers was the script that was written. I did another pass on it, so it was a shared writing credit, and that actually, what was that? That was sort of being developed simultaneously with Toxie. And so if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, it was a couple years ago, but I think Peter left shooting Toxie and went directly into shooting Brothers in Atlanta. So they were kind of simultaneous.
Oh, awesome. And then where did you guys have any, because I haven't seen it, but did you two have any scenes together during The Thicket?
We had a couple of scenes during The Thicket, and Peter brought me on to that one. He was a producer on The Thicket, and he was working very closely with Elliot Lester, the director, and they just kind of, because I had worked with Peter on Toxie, he sort of brought me on to that one. So most of my scenes were with James Hetfield, which was pretty awesome, but I had a little bit with Peter as well.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. And speaking of Toxie, so I had read that Luisa Guerrero is cited as being the performer under all of the prosthetics and makeup. So her physicality in other roles has been admirable and exciting. I even read that she was a performer in the Cirque du Soleil database. So how did you come across her, and when did that take place in this production where you decided to have her under all the makeup?
That was always part of the plan, was that we would have some sort of a stunt / physical performer under the makeup, and part of that was for Peter's schedule, and a bunch of other things, just sort of like the realities of production, and so how did what we did auditions is what it was, and we auditioned people that were approximate size to Winston, a little bit taller but still in the same world, and she just had the best one. And what it was she did have a lot of physical experience doing like full body costumes and tumbling and gymnastics, and so she had the sort of physical aspect, and that was cool. But she did something that a lot of the other ones that we saw didn't do, which was that she did a separate tape of just a monologue, like one of Winston's monologues from the movie, and it was even without all the makeup and everything like that, it was really heartbreaking, and it was a good thing to think about, that like this is, they're jumping and running and rolling and swinging a mop around, and of course that's part of it, but there's also like you want there to be some heart in it, and they need to be able to sort of work at a level that's in the same orbit as Peter Dinklage, so that they feel like they're the same person, which was the whole point. And so what she ended up doing was Peter came in early and he performed the whole movie on videotape, as Toxie, doing all the choices and everything like that. And then she studied those tapes and came to set and basically performed what Peter did. So she was doing like a version of Peter as Toxie, and then he came in later and redubbed the voice. So that's how it worked.
Yeah, and that, I think it's really cool to hear just how even in the role that she had, just how she also, just by giving that monologue, it really feels like she's trying to embody the character. She's not just doing the physicality. She she wants to be that, and I think that that's once it's out, it's gonna really, I think it pays off, because it debuted 2 years ago at a fest, I think, right?
Yeah, it was at it opened at Fantastic Fest, and then shortly after that it was at Beyond Fest, two really great festivals where the audiences were they were like totally designed to respond to this movie. So it was very cool to see, like they responded just the way that we were hoping.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the father of Trauma, Lloyd Kaufman, it sounds like he's ecstatic about this film. I imagine he would have seen it by now, right? At this point,
I'm yeah. He's seen it. He was at Fantastic Fest, and he was not at Beyond Fest, but he was definitely at Fantastic Fest. Yeah, he's seen it for sure. He's been very kind the whole time. He really seemed to go out of his way. Him and Michael Hers from Trauma as well. They both seemed to really go out of their way very early on to say, do your own thing. Like, we're not going to micromanage or whatever. And they didn't. And also, if they had wanted to, that would not have been surprising or a bother at all. But they didn't. They were just kind of like, you go do your own thing, and just remain very supportive the whole way. So it's been really sweet getting to collaborate with them, work alongside them, however you want to think about it. It's been really nice.
Yeah, and I'm sure it feels great too when you're doing you're doing this property that he had started in, what was it, 84, and to get him to be like, hey, it's all yours, man. Just do what you need. We're not going to micromanage. to be so supportive. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was, and what I was after was not leave me alone. What I was after was I'm trying to be careful with your baby, and like if you feel like I'm fucking up your baby, please let me know, and I'll do the best I can within whatever my conception of this thing is. But like the last thing I wanted to do, the only reason this is getting remade at all in the first place is because people have fucking loved it since 1984, and people would get older and pass it on to younger people, and it's got this enduring quality, the originals, and then it dovetails into cartoons and comic books, and it's this whole thing, stage musicals, and I didn't want to sort of just like stomp into that and steer it all the way into left field. It needed to be its own thing, and it needed to sort of exist on its own terms, but I wanted it to have a consistent tone with those original ones, and that's what I kept trying to sort of like not reassure them of, but that's what I wanted to communicate to them, was that sort of consistency was very important, and sort of respect for the vibe of the original was very important to us as we worked on it.
Yeah, and speaking of tone and even theme, so what was the most important thing for you to capture with your film? Because what I've seen with the previous ones, you got like corporate greed, environmentalism, consumerism, bullies, satire. I mean, it captures a lot, and this might be something that broadened out for the franchise itself, but did any of these themes come up, and were there any of these that you were kind of like, I really want to hit this with my version?
I see what you're asking, but I mean, not really. What it was what I said in the original meetings with Legendary, and what sort of we kept coming back to as the script was being developed and as we started making the movie, was wanting the spirit of the original, which to carry through to this one. And what I saw as the spirit was a kind of exuberant silliness and sort of like a very goofy sensibility that's meant to be entertaining and broad and kind of juvenile, but in a fun way. Obviously, like the gross out gore stuff is part of it, but sort of again played for laughs as opposed to nastiness and a kind of sweetness. Like their movies have as sort of gnarly and strange as they get, they have kind of a sweet handmade quality to them that I really love, and I wanted to sort of carry that stuff through. So even if the premise of the story is maybe a little different, or the character has a different name or whatever, and it's doing its own thing in some ways with regards to that kind of stuff, that the feeling of it would be the same, and it wouldn't feel like, well, this is a totally different universe with a different set of rules, but like we're doing that same silly, over the top kind of sophomoric entertainment that I found kind of appealing in those old ones.
Yeah, and I love that, because one thing that I definitely appreciate when it comes to movies is how some movies are just unapologetically go into absurdism, and I think that Toxic Avenger is an idea, as a concept, as a movie, it's this level of absurdism. You need that for it to be as silly and gross and everything. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a guy that got muscles from toxic waste, and he's hitting people with a mop. Like, what I was worried about early on before I got into it was like, I really hoped that they were not trying to do a serious, like a gritty, dark reboot, because I'm like, the whole reason for it existing in the first place is that silliness, is that kind of foolishness, and so that's what I wanted to circle back to.
Yeah, and it sounds like you nailed it. Definitely sounds like you nailed it, which is always a good thing, right? So what I like to do is I like to bookend it. So I start it the same way and I like to end it the same way. And that's with this question of, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And this could be professionally or personally.
Honestly, my dude, I hope we're living in a free fucking country. And if I get to make movies in the course of that, swell. And if I don't, that's okay too. But I don't want our democracy to go away. And I feel like it's slipping away. And so it's hard to think about 5 years from now, what movies or whatever. There's a lot of shit I want to do. I hope we all get a chance to do it. I don't know, man. It's sort of one day at a time at this point.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. It's it's scary to think about sometimes, but always try to be optimistic.
That's
and
true.
Like you said, one day at a time.
Yeah.
And also here at the end, if there's any socials, any things you want to plug, I mean, obviously you want us to look out for the Toxic Avenger when it releases. Just, the floor is yours to kind of talk about what you want to plug.
Toxic Avenger in theaters August 29th. I think it plays better on a big screen with buddies and beer. So if you can get a screen and buddies and beer, you'll be in good shape.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Means a lot. Like I said, I'm a big fan. Those movies that I mentioned that I saw you in, a couple of my favorites. So it's always a pleasure to be able to meet you virtually. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I wish you the best in all things.